Okie dokie everybody, this is just a little vignette to tell you that I'm at the Future Forum. I'll make some proper videos later on. This is just a little insert. We're here in the very privileged position of being among the front rows of the event. It's a two-day event, many halls, many locations, many speakers. We're waiting for Sergei Lavrov, everybody's hero. Anybody who has any interest in diplomacy esteems him as the godfather of modern diplomacy, a hero to many. We're here in row number 6, or strictly speaking, row F. So we should get a very good view. To get seats here is next to impossible. This thing is well attended. Well attended. Big names. You know, Suidlanders, for 25 years or so I worked in the live event industry and began at the bottom and ended up quite close to the top. I did many global broadcasts for MTV International, head office, project managed 3 world records. I was pretty successful. And the point of that is not to brag, but to give you a sense of perspective on what I'm about to say. The production values at this event are high, not unexpectedly high. I expected it to be the best, because everything in Moscow and elsewhere in Russia is the best. As I've said in many videos, you will never see so many Maybach Mercedes anywhere in the world. But let me tell you, the production values here are high. Some of the signage work is really about as good as it gets, and that's a very simple, almost childish example. And it just gives the lie to this constant Western refrain that the Russian government is taking computer chips from people's washing machines to make missiles. Do you know what I mean? This place is streets ahead. I think that there exists now a historical opportunity for Russia to take the global lead in conservative Christianity. I think that there exists now an opportunity that has never existed, never previously existed, for one country to be a leading force in this field. I think if events like this, it's fundamentally, you can see the images there. It's churches, cathedrals, a cross of a certain style. This is overtly a conservative Christian event. And if the Russians do get it right to assert themselves well in this regard, I think that they will find the support of hundreds of millions of disaffected, desperately disaffected conservative Christian Caucasians in New Zealand, Australia, South Africa, the USA, Canada, and of course Western, Central and Eastern Europe. We are begging God to relieve us of the curse of Masonic and satanic leadership. And there is no hope visible anywhere in the world, except perhaps, I'm talking about worthwhile hope, except perhaps in this country.
Уважаемые участники, гости форума будущего 2050, мы продолжаем программу форума «Панельные дискуссии. Многополярный мир в 21 веке». Модератор встречи, ведущий Первого канала профессор МГИМО Дмитрий Саймс.
Добрый день. Для меня большая честь, большое удовольствие приветствовать вас на этом заседании столь важного мероприятия, которое было организовано, как мне кажется, в правильное время и по правильным причинам.
The next question will come from Errol Musk, politician and businessman, and it just happens so that this is not just a coincidence that his last name is the same. He is the father of Mr. Musk that we know so much about and heard so much about. Please.
Listened with great interest to Minister Lavrov, so well explained. What I see today is the world is in a terrible state of flux. The countries around the world do not trust their governments in almost every case, and they have a lot of good reason for not trusting their governments. And last year, I had the opportunity in 2024 of traveling through the United States. And I can tell you that at that time, under the Biden administration, the country was in a state of, the people were in a state of shock, not knowing what lies ahead for them as this administration under this man, this, in my opinion, not a very good man, was doing to the country. And I have a lot of my family there, and they were asking, where are we going to go? We can't go anywhere else now. We came to America because this was going to be the place we could get away from all the terrible things that are happening around the world. And now it's coming to the United States. And by God's grace, in my opinion, Donald Trump was elected to be president at the end of last year with the help of my family. And everything changed. Everything changed. Everybody started smiling. I went to America, everybody was relieved. Everybody was breathing properly. I spent April this year in America. I like to tell people that, I like to think I should say to people that 80% of the population that I met from California to Texas last month in April was behind Trump, is behind Trump, 80%. That's not true. 100% behind Trump, 100% behind Trump. Trump talks about sovereignty for the United States. I believe you only come right when your country's sovereignty is established. I like the idea of multipolarity and all that sort of stuff, but first your own country, and then relations with each other. That works. Coming to Russia for the first time myself, I need to tell you, and I think many people here don't know this, but when you grow up in the West, you are taught from a very early age that Russia is a terrible place where you have to duck around dark shadows for fear of people killing you or stabbing you. You cannot live there under normal circumstances. You will be put in front of a firing squad if you do anything that they don't like. This is wrong. This is so wrong. I arrived here. I was going to come with my daughter, Alexandra. She's 32 years old now, and she's very close to me. But anyway, she was going to come on this trip. She joined me on a trip to India. And as we were about to leave, as it happened, Dubai for Moscow, she received instructions from my sons: do not go to Russia under any circumstances. And then I received messages from other people around Europe: do not go to Russia. Why? I said, why? Why must I not go to Russia? What is it? What am I supposed to be frightened of? You know, and I won't say they couldn't tell me. They sort of intimated that my life is at risk if I come to Russia. And, well, you know, I arrived here, and the first thing I saw was perfect, total civilization in every direction. I see a city that easily rivals ancient Rome, and probably, I made the comment to somebody earlier, is by far, not by a little, but by far, the premier capital city in the world. And I don't say that lightly. I mean, you know, I'm a critical person. Yeah, so I would like to say to Minister Lavrov that I've always enjoyed watching him on the television. He always has something quite witty to say. And so I've always enjoyed watching him on television. He always seems to come out the winner. And so what I'd like to sort of suggest to him is, how can we change the perception of the West about Russia? Because I think this is probably, if not the finest, one of the finest communities in the world that I've seen.
You know, thank you very much for your kind words. Thank the greatest community or group of people. Well, you can describe it in different terms, but many Russians and many other peoples living in the former Soviet Union had the happiest moment in their lives when they had this meeting on the Elbe after they defeated the terrible enemy against all odds, against all of those diplomatic maneuvers that we saw on the part of the West during the first months and years of the war. Yes, assistance was coming. There was the Lend-Lease, but that was not free of charge. The important thing is that they were waiting, especially the Brits did, to see on which side to enter the war. And that had been accumulating over the years. There was mistrust. But thanks to several meetings at the top level between the leaders of the United States, Russia, or the USSR and the UK, they were able to develop a geopolitical compromise at the top level. Of course, that was based upon cold calculation, the balance of interests. But I didn't see anything more embodying the sense of happiness as the documentary footage showing the troops, the American and the Russian troops meeting on the Elbe. But then it all got disrupted by and large. Even before the end of World War II, our allies had been planning the Operation Unthinkable at the initiative of the UK. Well, it's good that they realized that they shouldn't be attacking the Soviet Union. They thought it was unthinkable, of course, but nevertheless, that's something that shows what they were thinking about. But then there was the Fulton speech of Churchill, and then the start of the Cold War, the Iron Curtain, descending upon Europe, and that was the greatest community of people at the time. Maybe it will never emerge like that. Everyone has its own happiness, but a community of people representing different cultures, different countries, who are nevertheless feeling the same, the feeling of triumph over evil. That is probably the most important thing. And right now, we are also talking about the fight between the good and the evil. You're absolutely right when you're saying that in the West and primarily in Europe now, and not in the entire Europe, by the way, this core, aggressive core, led by the Starmers, the likes of Merz and Macron, they just want, in addition to fighting against us by supplying Ukraine with high-precision weapons, high-tech weapons, something that the Ukrainians cannot manage or control. That means that these countries control the weapons. And in addition to that, they want to demonstrate our country's isolation by prohibiting everyone to come here. Some EU deputy arrived at a celebration of the 80th anniversary of the victory, and he was either expelled from a party or wasn't allowed to go somewhere. That's a shame. That's fascism in its pure form. And remember what happened in Romania. I've already mentioned that. And there will probably be other cases happening. Just one interesting aspect came to my mind. Let me share it with you. All these countries have their ambassadors. Some have general consulates in St. Petersburg and in some other cities. And of course, the job of an ambassador is to provide its government with the honest information about the country. And if the country needs to be defeated strategically, then the ambassadors need to report back to their country how this is done in Russia, against which the war is going on, the war to defeat Russia. I don't know what the ambassadors are sending back in their dispatches, but we can tell you certain things. For example, so let me just use one example. A year ago, in May of 2024, we at our ministry just thought and decided not to respond in kind to those rules that were introduced in respect of other ambassadors that were introduced by European countries. They wouldn't let them come in with, or wouldn't even give them audiences, with the exception of certain cases when they had to really complain. But we had this practice when we would meet with all of the ambassadors of the European Union twice a year, taking turns either on our platform or on their platform, and we would discuss at working lunches all of the issues that people might be interested in. And we decided to invite them, nevertheless. That was in May of 2024, as I said, simply to ask them, without making announcements about that, simply to ask them what it is that they don't understand about what's going on. Because apparently their capitals didn't appear to be really well informed about what is going on, what the results of this aggression against Russia, what effect it has produced on Russia's leadership and on Russia's society. So we invited all, including the head of the representative office of the European Union. We set the date, the time, and then several days before the set date, we got a response from them that they received instructions to cancel, or rather refuse, this invitation. So Europe couldn't care less about the results of its actions at that time, the results of its militant, belligerent and aggressive policy. And they forbid their ambassadors to show up. I mentioned this publicly, and following that, it became known to us that they gathered at the office of the European Commission, and they decided to respond to my public criticism. And in response, they wrote a paper, which they then would publish. And in this paper, there was a draft of that paper. It said that this is all false. They did not accept the invitation because they couldn't accept the invitation from the Minister of Foreign Affairs of a country which attacked Ukraine and something like that. And that also poisoned Navalny, as among other things. And I would like to remind everyone that similar to how we couldn't get any answer to our requests regarding the names of those that were in Bucha, whose bodies were shown there, neither from Guterres, nor from journalists or from other authorities. Journalists seem to know about Epstein in the United States, but they know nothing about Bucha, it appears. But the mention of Navalny is also an attempt to speculate on the fate of a human being, no matter what you think about him, because when Navalny was transported within 1 day without all the necessary paperwork that should have been put together when he was moved from Omsk to Germany on a plane that arrived here with people on board that didn't have any passports or visas. And when he was taken into the Charité hospital in Berlin, it was a civilian hospital, they didn't find anything wrong with him.
And he was immediately taken to the military hospital, and then they discovered something, and the very same moment we said that we didn't discover anything, and the civilian hospital didn't see anything, can we get familiar with the documents? And they said, no, if we disclose Navalny's analysis, you will learn more about the progress of our biological program. That's an answer that we got, and therefore they said that we will render that the results to the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. And actually we turned to the OPCW and said, where are the documents? And they said the Germans didn't give us anything. I'm not kidding. So how Navalny was treated and what he was administered in that military hospital, we do not know. How that medicine may have any side effects in a year's time, in 2 years' time. And again, let me remind you that we were denied the document just like MH17. No one presented any facts, just 13 witnesses. Only one was in presentia and others were in absentia and anonymously. The United States, for instance, recently provided satellite images and just they did not show that. It was mentioned that they have shown that to the court, and probably they didn't do that, but the court trusts the United States that the evidence is right. And again, this is another manifestation of impunity and being confident that you are right, which is the main driver for those who want to undermine the multipolarity using anything, including the military force. And I'm urged to say that the truth is on our side and multipolarity would be ours.
Righty everybody, I am in the taxi. I have just left the Forum of the Future at a very impressive convention center here in the heart of Moscow, right in the I didn't make many videos today, but fortunately it will continue tomorrow, and tomorrow I'll devote to making videos. Sadly today was just taken up by too many other things, having to meet somebody first thing in the morning, then being a bit bewildered and overwhelmed by people and being pulled in 6 different directions at once. But I'd like to give you a little bit of a rundown as you look at the scenes of Moscow, which in themselves have value as far as Suidlanders' work in Russia is concerned, because our work is partly about exposing the lie and the myth of Western propaganda regarding what is occurring in Ukraine, which is not to say Russia always good, everybody else always bad. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is somebody's lying to us, somebody's telling porky pies, and they are the same people, the Western elites, who've lied to us on 100 other subjects over the courses of our lifetimes, going back to since forever, but you could say particularly in recent decades, more particularly over the past, call it 5 years. Those same people are dragging the world to hell. Who knows who on which side is complicit in that? By no means are we saying that we know for sure these guys are good and these guys are bad, and that it's just as simple as that, and these matters are not deep and mysterious. better job of summing it up with 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 words. There was a lot of conversation about family, faith, demographics, and so on. The themes, the topics that you and I know very, very well and which lie very close to our hearts. Big names were there. George Galloway. Look, George Galloway is a notorious, if you like, liberal. He was a Labour member of Parliament in the UK. And he's renowned for holding very left-wing positions. However, for various reasons he was there. Colonel Wilkerson, who we all know from Judge Napolitano. Judge Napolitano is apparently here, or he's going to be here tomorrow. Alex Jones is going to be here tomorrow. Sergei Lavrov, the very renowned, astute, highly regarded Russian foreign minister, spoke at length. And there are other big names. It seems to me Russians are, and I hope that I'm right, consider this fight which is in the spirit and in the heavenlies. If we consider the fleshly aspect, which we say is not well, we look at the cataclysmic events. In the fleshly terms of this fight, it may be that Russia is in initiatives such as this, and banning LGBTQ propaganda at schools, etc., 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 a score of other things, perhaps going to be the last great hope of Caucasian Christianity. The Russians are ethnically a Caucasian people. They're as European as you and I are. The Russians of Russia. Like that girl over there. She looks just like any beautiful young woman in South Africa. And in fact, the northern Russians are what they call the true Aryan Russians. Because northern Russians that I met on my visit to Arkhangelsk over the past week, or I should say last week, and a bit of the week before. And they are a Christian people. The church plays a very important role in this society. The acceptance of the salvation of Jesus Christ, the Lamb of God, the Word of God, the one who in the beginning was with God, plays a far greater role in this society than in any other society that I can think of. Yes. So if I say that this just may be the last hope of Caucasian Christianity, I justify it with those explanations which may not be familiar to people who don't know the Russians ethnically or religiously. So the conference offers hope. It's a very well put on conference. projects management, special projects like opening and closing ceremonies of World Cups and inaugurations of presidents and that kind of thing. And I project managed some very, very big conferences and project managed 3 world records. The only 3 world records hosted, as far as I know. I mean, I've been out of the industry in South Africa, all 3 of the only 3. My point being not so much to brag as to point out that I understand a conference, I understand a symposium, I understand a convention. Choose your favorite word, but these guys have put on something terrific. It's a very well done job, and they invested a great deal of money in it. Personally, as much as I admire George Galloway, and I just introduced myself to him now, and we ended up, for various reasons, having a fat chat. Although, as I said to him at the beginning, I should be honest and say that we don't share politics. I told him, sir, I don't share your politics, but I do admire your oratorical and rhetorical gifts. In my opinion, you're the best. And what you do, that is to speak the way Steve Hofmeyr speaks, very intelligently and very rapidly. And he's married to a Surinamese woman. I believe she's ethnically Surinamese. So she's a, she's not a white girl. But she and I got on quite nicely. She asked me for a small favor, and between my conversation with her and my greeting of George Galloway and my admiration for him, we ended up having a lacquer chat, a nice chat, a pleasant chat. So I bear him no ill will. I just make the point that I wouldn't invite a guy like that to a conference about people, about folk, as we would put it, about retaining ethnic identity, about the threat of immigration here in Russia, which is becoming very great. We don't share the same opinions as George Galloway, but nevertheless, for the most part, a splendid conference. And I'm very glad for the opportunity to have been there, or to be there, if you like, because I'll be back there tomorrow. These guys really are making a great effort, and the effort that they're making is very much reflective of the social, the concerns of Russian society. They're not isolated, they're not a splinter group, they're not out of the mainstream as true conservatives are in the USA. Obviously, I'm not referring to Donald Trump, who's been married 3 times and who appointed a man who's married to a man as his, Minister of Finance, Treasury Secretary. I'm talking about the true conservatives of the USA. They are outsiders, very much outside the mainstream, very much not in line with any of the churches in the USA. The 2 most conservative churches, as it was described to me, the Southern Baptist Convention and the Dutch Reformed, of northern Michigan have recently adopted LGBTQ, that sort of thing. So if you talk about true conservatives, these guys are supported by their society. The people who put on this conference. So it's very interesting. Very interesting, and I'm not sure that I have anything more interesting to tell you. I'm in the taxi. I'm on my way home. I'm going to have, hopefully the little restaurant around the corner from the hotel, or actually it's built, the two are built into one another. We'll have sashlik, or nice shawarma. It's Armenian people. They make nice food. Here's the taxi, spotlessly clean, neat, tidy, new, good quality. This is Russia, not what they tell us, not what Ursula von der Leyen says has become of Russia in the face of the sanctions. A society brought to its knees. Very, very far from it. Anyway, everybody, thank you very much for watching this video. I hope that you found it informative, and in the days to come, I hope that I will be able to surprise you all with a tremendous new adventure. All right then. Goodbye, and God bless all of you Suidlanders.